And I am back. It's been a while since I shot some videos. The team has been really busy on a new major version of the product, 4.0. Huge release. We're releasing beta on Monday. It is June 28th. It's a Friday now. So it's like end of day Friday. I'm late on some videos because the team's been working so hard, and I want to show off some of the features. So in this video specifically, I'm going to focus on the fact that flows are gone. They're not quite gone, but we've migrated flows to pipelines. So I want to kind of show you how that works, explain it, explain some of the future, and then if we can get into it, I'll try to get into the new model validation stage that we have in the 4.0 beta as well. Now, the whole point of the beta is to get it out, get feedback. We have another 5-ish sprints, 2-week sprints until release, so we have plenty of time to continue to work and refine what we have. And I'll speak to other things that we'll be working on along the way. So without further ado, what you're seeing here is not 4.0 beta. This is 3.4 that I have running here. So I have a simple project here. I'm just collecting some data from OPC. I'm sending it to a local broker, in this case HighByte, or what I call my UNS. And if you look, I've got a conveyor model, and I've modeled that with an instance, or I have an instance of that conveyor one that's mapped to some tags, do a test read. Nothing magic here. This is kind of our typical fare. And then I've got a flow that just once a second is grabbing that source data and sending it to the output. And if I launch the UNS client and connect in, we'll see it's on a conveyors topic. So this is all 3.4. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this project and I'm going to bring it into the beta. So let's go out and I'll just choose export. I'll get the full project, copy that JSON out. And now let's focus on 45 to 45, the new stuff. So you'll instantly see the UI is different. We kind of reworked the look and feel every major release. I think it looks better. It looks pretty cool, right? It looks pretty slick and modern. So props to the team for that. So I've already imported it here, but pretend I didn't. I'm going to go back in and just re-import the full project from JSON. All right, so I've imported everything. You can see it looks successful. If I go to connections, it looks the same. I've got the OPC connection and UNS connection. Now I do have to make a quick change. I think the broker here, 1892, I just want to make sure I'm connected to the broker at this instance. So I have both instances on my machine. I just need to make sure the ports there are different. The models, I've got a conveyor model, I've got an instances. There's a lot of changes to models and instances to enhance. You can put inline hierarchy. We'll get into that in another video, but not focus on that here. And then flows are gone. So what did we do? If you go into pipelines, basically what we've done is we've transposed flow to pipeline, so it's one-to-one. And if I open up this pipeline, you'll see instantly, and the first thing I'm going to say is that pipelines are super powerful. They've got us a long way. One of the things we're going to work on post-beta is kind of rethinking this UX and making it a little easier. You'll see as I kind of manage it, it gets a little cluttered, a little difficult. So that's one thing, definite thing that we're working on now, working on wires. So I'm really excited for what we'll be able to do there. But you'll see that we put some coloring in here to try to signify that there's actually 3 parts of pipelines now. There's a trigger stage, can generate data. This is where the old flow lives, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. The start stage, which existed before, this is where events, data come into the pipeline, and then the stages, right, which represent how we're going to transform the data in the pipeline. So if I click the flow stage, you'll see this is one-to-one for flows. So there's no magic here, right? You see I have my sources, and this is really the front end of the flow. So this is the data collection and all the logic before the flow goes to write is still in here. So intervals, the modes, publish, everything one for one, even templating, right? All that gets carried over. So your flows don't change. They're just now what we call triggers in pipelines. In addition to that, pipelines have other trigger types. So we have an event-based trigger that you can subscribe to OPC or MQTT, and I'll try to show that as well here in a different pipeline. Flow-based trigger, which is the one I just showed you, and then a poll trigger, which is simply polling on a time, and I think we have a requirement to bring in cron job syntax in here as well to more fine control of that. But the beauty of this is if I go, so this flow, sorry, it's going to be hard. I'm going to call it a flow. This pipeline is running, and if I launch the UNS client here, which connects locally, you'll see conveyors, and you'll see the same data, right? So if I bounce back to 3.4, and I bounce to 4, 2.0 beta, there is no difference, right? And that's the beauty. Like, you can migrate, you don't have to change anything. Everything's going to migrate just fine. And that was one of our tenets, right? We're not going to make you do a bunch of work to get existing functionality over to a major version. So that's pretty cool, right? And so the other thing I want to show is the event-based flows. So let me think of a quick way to do that. So if I go into, I always navigate. This is one of my favorite features we added in 3.4. If you're in the UNS client and you accidentally go to navigate away, it's like, hey, do you really want to do that? I actually don't. So what I want to do really quick is I'm just going to jump over to connections, and I'm going to create a input, I believe. And what I'm going to do is I just want to ingest the data that I'm sending out. So in this case, I want to be specific on the topic. I don't want all the data from the broker. So if I do this, I should be able to see this is my own data that I'm sending out. So what I want to do is I'm going to go create a new pipeline. I'm going to call this UNS events. And instead of a task flow trigger, and you can do this with task flow because task flow can handle events before, what I want to do is create an event trigger. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pop that panel and go into that input I just created and pull that in. I'm going to leave this off for now. So triggers can be on or off. They default to off, just kind of like that flow functionality. So I can kind of shut a pipeline down if I so choose. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back and do a write new stage. And I'm just going to write back out to the pipeline. So let me... Again, this UX, you can see I'm a little lost in the dialogue. So we are reworking this. But what I'm going to do is go select, I'll just call it conveyors validated. Okay, so what should happen is when I turn this pipeline off, what it's going to do when I turn this trigger stage on, it's going to subscribe to those events. Those events are going to come through the pipeline, and I'm just going to output them back out to the UNS on a different topic. I call it conveyors validated, and that'll make more sense in a second. But if I output that, and this is what I'm working towards, I'm going to show you the model validation stage, which I think is really cool. So conveyors validated. So you can see I'm subscribing to those events, and I'm just outputting them back on a topic. I'm doing no transformation, nothing super interesting here. I'm just kind of sending that back out, and I'll just call this to UNS just to be clear. So what I want to do now is do actually model validation. So if you scroll down here, there's a new model validation stage. And if I pull this in, what it does is it's the ability to connect to a data stream, an event that comes through here, and make sure it fits a certain shape. In this case, I have a conveyor model that I imported from 3x. And what I want to say is that any data that's coming through that topic that's flowing through here, I want to make sure that it passes validation. And there's a failure path and a success path. So I'm going to hook this up, the existing one, to the success path. And I think this is actually going to fail because the additional metadata that we're putting in there, underscore name model timestamp, is not part of the model definition. So to catch that, what we'll do is, let me put one more write new stage in. And off the failure path, I'm going to say, I'm going to call it conveyor bad. All right. And I'm pretty sure that will fail. So I'm going to save that. We'll come back out and look, and it does, right? It fails validation. And one of the big reasons we're moving to pipelines, it's more visual, it's easier. We have some work to do. So when I create a pipeline, there's like a wizard page, and it's more intuitive. So it's just about as simple as flows. But then once you have the pipeline, there's just way more functionality, right? I can come in here. This has existed always in pipelines. I can turn on tracking, and if I turn on tracking and replay, right, I can see that, okay, these events are coming in. I can see what that event shape looks like. I can see that it went through the model validation stage and then came out the bad stage. And if I look in the actual metadata, it'll tell me why, right? Property, and there's a lot of detail here, but property underscore model is not in the model definition. And I kind of skipped over that part, but if we go and look at the model definition, you'll see I have speed, status, and runtime. These are all set to any. Again, this UI has changed. We'll get back into how modeling has changed and how you can add hierarchy and do some cool stuff here. But you can see I'm not doing actually a ton of model definition other than verifying these attributes are there because I don't have a hard data type set. But in here, you can see these events are coming through and they're failing because of that. Okay, well, I don't care about that extra metadata, right? So what I'm actually going to do is come out and say, I'm going to allow additional properties to be there. And now if I refresh and look, I should be taking the success path. And if I go out to the UNS client, you can see this is validated data, right? So, but you have that flexibility. So currently, this stage can validate against a single, if we go back, single data model. But the idea is probably provide a list of models that you can validate against. If you're taking your data over MQTT or from a source, this is a way to say, hey, I want to make sure the shape of this thing and its data types, etc., meets my definition of what I want in my data lake or in my MQTT broker, so I can validate that. The other thing that's not in here that'll be coming for release is there's actually a model stage, right? So I should be able to, maybe I just want to validate the payload, but I also might want to, inside the context of a pipeline, say I have this event coming in with all these attributes. I want to remap that into a model definition with some logic like you would in instances today, but all the data that I want to model is coming through that event. I want to reshape that and then send it out. So the ability to do modeling actually inside the pipeline as well. So pretty cool. And like I said, there's pipelines have statistics. So if if we went back into replay here, this has always existed, but I can look at timing. It's taking me less than a millisecond to write out to MQTT. In this case, it's actually, this is actually not waiting to see if the validation is taking less than a millisecond. And I'm writing out to MQTT in 31 milliseconds per write. That's information you are not going to get from a flow before. And even in the trigger stage, we'll put timing. That's not in there in the beta, but more timing and statistics. So you'll be able to troubleshoot, diagnose the timing, see exactly what's going on, be able to do more transformation, buffering, all the stuff you can do in pipelines now that flows are gone, or at least their tasks, their triggers inside of a pipeline. So I've rambled too long. It's a Friday. I got to get out of here anyway. Eventually, the team's been doing some awesome work. So hopefully that makes sense. You can kind of see where we're going. Again, pull the beta down, give us feedback. That's what it's for, and we'll adjust that. But we're really excited about these changes and some other changes I'll be talking about soon. Cheers.